The Star and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, check out cheapesttshirts.ca. A huge selection for men, women, and kids. Hoodies, t-shirts, headwear, bags, even towels. Get this. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. Style, value, and speed, all with cheapesttshirts.ca. Brought to you by Cabletel. For reliable alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, you can trust Cabletel, servicing the region for more than 20 years. Expert installation and top-tier protection for your home or business. Visit cabletel.com. Email them info@cabletel.com to get secure today. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's. Craving unforgettable steak and fine dining? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132, 15 minutes from downtown Montreal, brings you premium cuts, bold flavors, and an atmosphere that's perfect for any night out. From exceptional service to an outstanding wine list, this is where great meals become great memories. Reserve your next night out and go to morellasteakhouse.ca to reserve now. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Looking for the best for your pet? LittleBearOnline.com with online orders. They're also available on Uber Eats. It's a family-owned business in Montreal that's been around for more than 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their wonderful staff have all your needs taken care of because they care about your pet as much as you do, with the best prices on top brands from around the world. Toys, food, bedding, everything your pet could ever want. LittleBearOnline.com or visit their store on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. Brought to you by McLean's. Get down to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in downtown Montreal. It's your go-to spot for great food, cold drinks, and big sports on the big screens. Classic pub food and a lively vibe only steps from all the action. Stop by today at McLean's, 1210 Peel Street. Good times and great company. It's the Star and D'Amico Show. I'm Sean Starr. There's Marco D'Amico. You can follow him at MN Read all his latest on the regular at rg.org, covering the Montreal Canadiens. Marco, the Montreal Canadiens and the NHL trade market has been obviously a hot button issue. Ken Hughes certainly touched on it more than once during his midseason press conference from a week ago, or getting close to a week ago now. But the latest coming from NHL insider Pierre LeBrun via TSN is that the Montreal Canadiens, and they're not alone, Marco, sniffing around the prospects of looking at Calgary's forward Blake Coleman. The 34-year-old's got 1 year left at under $5 million. He seems to check a lot of boxes. What's your read here on Blake Coleman, what the availability, but more importantly, could you see him as a fit for Martin St. Louis and what this management team is building?
I think in terms of style, yes. Obviously, it's all about the cost, right? And I think back to Kent Hughes' presser, at what cost? And we'll get into that in a sec. But when it comes to the kind of player the Montreal Canadiens are looking for, this is it. This is the kind of player. But obviously, 5'11", 200 pounds. I know that people are going to look at the 5'11", not the 200 pounds. But Blake Coleman hits like a truck, plays physical. $4.9 million for this season and the next. This is a guy that can bring a lot of jam to your bottom six. Has 2 Stanley Cups under his belt, and to me, on a roster that's a little bit more offensive, I think he could be worth. He could definitely put up more points than he already is now. He's got 13 goals and 8 assists in 21 for 21 points in 44 games as of the 9th of January. So, with my information being up to date here, he's on pace for about 20-ish points, 25 goals here. So 25 goals on the Calgary Flames right now. There's only 2 players that are close to him. He leads the team in goal scoring right now, but mostly getting a lot of those defensive minutes. That says something, right? Because last year you had Nazem Kadri that was leading this team in goal scoring with 35 goals. And now we've seen a big drop off on his game. So, it's interesting to see how the Calgary Flames have been going, but I see the physical. I see what the Canadiens are looking for in him as a guy that you can plug into your bottom six, but also a guy that can play up and down your lineup. Not unlike Alex Texier, but a different style to Alex Texier.
And we'll get into, as you alluded to, I want to talk obviously about, what's the educated guess on what the Canadiens, and again, there are other teams that would obviously be interested for the reasons Marco
Oh, for
outlined,
sure.
the playoff experience, the cap hit. Apparently, by all accounts, he's much beloved by his teammates, so he brings that
Yeah.
leadership, camaraderie angle to the table. But he's on a line with Coronado and Backlund. That's a high-scoring, consistent line number
Hmm.
two, essentially, I guess, for the Calgary Flames. Before we get into like what it would cost to get him from Ken Hughes's perspective, what about the role he would fill? Because Hughes alluded to the fact they want experience and they want physicality. So check for Coleman in a double whammy, I suppose. But can you envision a scenario hypothetically that if the Canadiens acquired him, he's inserted into their top six, or is he more skewed based on how the Habs are built as a bottom six?
Uh, I think you could put him anywhere,
Yeah.
really, and I think that's the beauty of it. Like he played in Tampa's top six when there was injuries, no problem there, and I think he did well there. He's played in on Calgary's top six before, and to really solid results. I mean, he does have a 54 point season under his belt not 2 seasons ago, where he scored 30 goals. So it's not like he hasn't shown the ability to be an offensive player in that situation. The only thing that concerns me is the age,
Yeah.
right? He's 34 years old. Just turned 34 years old, 35 years old next year. So you're not quite sure with wingers if you want to really kind of pay the price. And obviously, again, opportunity cost is what you worry about here. But
Yep.
stylistically, nose for the net, really quick hits. Is a guy that in a playoff situation is probably going to be able to elevate his line. That's what you're looking for. Because right now, I feel like when we talk about acquisitions, everyone's looking for the sexy acquisition. But the sexy acquisitions were drafted. Demidov, Kapanen, right? Those are the sexy acquisitions this year. Lane Hudson evolving the way he did. The big first line kind of player, I don't think you're going to be getting in the middle of the season. Think to Noah Dobson, right? That trade only happened in the offseason. Very rare does a team ever trade a player like Noah Dobson. Even rarer in the regular season. Usually these are summer deals. So the same I think would apply here. So what you're looking for at this stage in the season likely isn't going to be the home run, but you're looking to get a
Mhm.
single. And I think Blake Coleman is a single with a potential to steal second base. If and only if the opportunity cost is there. And so like that's where this discussion comes back, because I feel like you have to take a lot of things into consideration. One, the Canadians really do want to have more left shots on their team, a lot of right shots right now, and the left shots they do have, not necessarily like shoot first kind of guys, right? Demidov, not a shoot first kind of guy. Excellent player, but not a shoot first kind of guy. Slavkovsky, left shot, not a shoot first kind of guy. And I don't think that they'd be looking at guys like Coleman if a guy like Zachary Bolduc, a left shot, were getting off the pucks in a hurry and finding Twine on a more regular basis. So that's the reason why they're informing themselves is the type of player they're looking for. It's the type of player I believe they thought they were acquiring in Zach Bolduc. And if that's not if they don't feel like Zachary Bolduc is going to be able to do that, or at least in the short term, then I do definitely understand why Blake Coleman would be of interest. But I've said it before, Sean. This is a player that's going to be very coveted.
I think that's such a money point you bring to the table regarding Zachary Bolduc. Again, a very young player. No one's pulling the shoot, suggesting that it was a bad transaction, but maybe covering yourself, especially living up to what the Montreal Canadiens have been able to accomplish from a competitive landscape, I suppose, or context around where Montreal is consistently in the top three of the division, and certainly at the time. When they knocked off and dominated the Florida Panthers, climbing to the first rung of the NHL's Atlantic Division. What's also important, I suppose, in this conversation around Calgary Flames forward Blake Coleman, Marco, is he has a say in what his future has in store for him this season. He has a 10-team list where he can get dealt to without, I guess his approval.
Mhm.
So obviously Montreal, is a very competitive team. I think, we've spoken about this in terms of the narrative around, people having an allergic reaction to coming to play for Montreal. I think it's a completely different organization. So let's get into what it would cost essentially. What's a realistic kind of
Hmm.
price that you could see the Canadians pay if Coleman says, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go to Montreal," and Calgary says, "Yeah, we're good to make this move, but here's what we're looking for,"
Calgary is looking for a first round pick and then some. Could
and
tell
then
you that
some.
right off the bat. Yeah, like that's. But again, like this is what I'm trying to say. Like these are the, and I put out an article regarding this. Prices are sky high right now in the trade market. Like it's insane. People that were complaining about Phil Deneau for a second round pick are going to do backflips when they find out what general managers are asking for some of these premium players, even
Right.
in bottom six roles, right? Like they want a first round pick plus and that plus being like a prospect that could help them sooner rather than later. So it they feel like they can get there because there's going to be enough interest. What I think hurts them, and you just brought it up, is going to be his trade clause.
Yep.
Like definitely having a 10 team, a 21 team no trade clause. So only 10 teams that you could be traded to,
Yeah.
that limits the field significantly unless he decides to lift it because it's a contending team that convinces him that it's worthwhile, which listen, it happens with the Canadians sometimes, right? Like what I think needs to be understood, and it was funny, I was talking to Alex Texier about this yesterday, during his the night of his hat trick basically.
Yeah.
He he explained that the perception of Montreal to him has always been attractive, but the perception of Montreal across the league has taken so many steps up compared to where it was just a couple of years ago. And it's quickly gonna become a destination. So
Right.
I'm not necessarily worried about no trade clauses in this regard. There are players that in the right situation with the right conversation can lift no trade clause. I don't think that's a problem. It really does become a fit issue in terms of can you get a trade down? And I just don't know that Montreal is in the situation right now where they need to sacrifice a first round pick for a bottom six player. Like you're not there yet. And
Mhm.
I feel like if you're going to throw that kind of an asset away now, I feel like you would be depriving yourself of an opportunity later in toward the trade deadline or this summer leading up to the draft when maybe some bigger names are going to become available that could play maybe higher in your lineup as opposed to, trying to take advantage of this situation when the Flames are trying to tell everybody and their mother that they're not in a rebuild situation. So, to me, I think a first and a prospect is the idea, but it's the valuation of a first. I think they'd also go for a young roster player that
Mhm.
could potentially jump into their lineup that is in the value of a first round pick as well. So that's why it's a little murky in terms of what it is that Calgary wants, but it's if they trade one, they're going to have to start trading others. And if Rasmus Anderson is on the go, if Blake Coleman's on the go, Nazem Kadri has been talked about potentially wanting out, welcoming a trade now, which is the new jargon for being okay with being traded. Um, at this point, Calgary is going to field a lot of these calls, and you're going to have contenders going after some of these players. But there's a finite amount of contenders, but there's an even smaller amount of sellers, and I think this is where Calgary will be able to request high prices. And to me, I just don't. I would be shocked to see the Canadians be that aggressive when their window isn't yet open. But we have an idea now of what they're looking for on the market.
There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Sean Starr. Thanks for being with us. As much as I like Blake Coleman, as much as I think you and I see it kind of the same way, he checks boxes in a layered way. What makes me hesitant, and I think if I'm understanding you correctly here, the fact that they gave up two firsts and Emil Heineman to get Noah Dobson here, who has more or less locked down the top spot on the right side and then signed to an extension and became the highest paid player. The fact that here in this conversation, Blake Coleman is 34, Blake Coleman makes 4.9. This falls into the category maybe of a rental. We've talked before about how many injured players they have, guys coming on from injury, guys in the pipe from the American Hockey League or drafted players, maybe like a Michael Hage in the NCAA, and down the line, Alexander Zarovsky. That when I think about it that way, the timing for Blake Coleman is not now and not before March of the trade deadline. It's unless something devastating happens again. It's hard for me to make sense of it and the timing at syncing up essentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, would the Canadiens have interest in Blake Coleman? Absolutely, but at what
They
cost?
should, yeah.
At what cost? You know, and that's what Kent Hughes has been saying from the get-go. So
Yeah.
I believe him when he says it because, why you make these kinds of trades where you're willing to throw a first round pick at Blake Coleman when you're in the same situation that Tampa Bay was in 2019, 2020, 2021. You know, like that era where you're at the cusp of contention. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the Canadiens are in the top end of the Atlantic Division right now, and that's fantastic. But they're not at the contention window is not there. There's a lot of things that's still left to figure out. They're doing well in almost every other area, but there are some holes left to be figured out. And so I just feel like giving up a first round pick and then some for a player that will be around for maybe 18 months and then potentially drops off. I just don't know that that's the play. You know, I think that if you're going to go that route, maybe Kiefer Sherwood is a better option in that regard, even though he doesn't have the experience. He's got more goal scoring in him right now. He's younger, and maybe you can talk him down his contract number. They're looking for 5 million in his cap. Maybe if you can get him down into the fours, it makes sense. But
Right.
again, this is a guy. You're starting to see a theme, is all I'm saying, and I just don't think the Canadiens are in a position right now where throwing a first round pick at a bottom six player is necessarily the way to go.
So in other words, the NHL trade deadline is heating up, but dot 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 dot. I mean, at the end of the day, I think um, it's getting a little bit more juicy. It's getting a little bit more interesting. We'll see how tempted the Montreal Canadiens are between now and then. Marco D'Amico, solid stuff as always. Check him out at rg.org, covering all things Montreal Canadiens. And of course, you can follow him and follow our show on all your favorite social medias at Star and D'Amico. Thanks, man.
Always a pleasure, guys.